All right. Welcome back to Practify, the podcast where we go inside the minds of private practice owners who've successfully scaled their practice and are open to sharing the strategies and mindset behind their growth. Today's guest is Rachel Laurice, a metabolic nutritionist who's mastered the art of social media to build authority and attract the right clients. Rachel has taken one of the most complex areas of health, metabolism, and built a brand around it that cuts through the noise online. She's proof that when you combine clinical expertise with content clarity, you can create both impact and a thrive in business. So without further ado, Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gilad. What an introduction.
It's a pleasure to have you, Rachel. So to kick things off, I know that obviously today you're known as a metabolic nutritionist with a clear specialty and obviously quite a strong online presence, but I'm sure that when you got started, like things always weren't like this. So if you could just kind of take us back to the beginning, walk us through what your practice looked like in those early days when things were just getting started.
For sure. So you're totally right. It wasn't even close to where I am today. I'm still pinching myself a little bit, but I actually was a cashier at Whole Foods, a grocery store, and I worked my way into store management position there. And that's when I met my husband, boyfriend at the time. He was the one who said to me, "Hey, Rachel, I want to introduce you to a fitness influencer." And I said, "That's cool." I was just had no idea where it was going to go. I ended up meeting her and she was super cool, super down to earth. And I thought that was it. And then my husband said, "Rich, you could do this." And I thought to myself, I've always been curious about fitness and nutrition, but at the time I didn't have a certification. I was a store manager, so I was really involved in health food management. Anyway, he planted the seed. One step led to the next, and I enrolled in nutrition courses and I started doing nutrition certificates. And then I just kept enrolling and graduating while I was a manager. And a lot of the time, I was so passionate about what I was doing, but I didn't know that there was a huge marketing component in order to get clients and things like that. So I affiliated with different gyms and other nutrition consulting companies. And I started posting, and one thing led to the next, and here we are today.
And how did you discover your interest in metabolism specifically? Like what led you to that specifically?
Oh, that's a great question. So it was my own personal experience. So I did everything wrong when I was trying to lose weight. When I went to like college or university the very first time, I ended up gaining 40 pounds. And you know how they say that joke about it's freshman 20 pounds? Well, I ended up gaining 40. So my sister used to tease me, call me an overachiever. But long story short, I lost when I lost the weight the first time. I sort of was really restrictive. I was miserable. I was drinking tons of water. I was feeling lightheaded, but I was really focused on a caloric deficit. And I did lose weight. But then I ended up, when I went back to school after the summer, I ended up gaining it all back and more. And then I tried a weight loss program. It was a weight loss program where you eat like their product, and it was expensive, and my parents at the time were paying for it. But when I went back to school, they said, like, it's all you. And I again gained the weight. So I had to figure out, okay, how am I actually going to lose weight? And is it really this hard? Because after gaining weight every time I was on my own, it just felt really, defeating. And so I started to actually learn about nutrition, and I was blown away, specifically when I was learning how to work with my metabolism, not to sound like, not to not appreciate the effort, but it was so much easier than all the bizarre things I was doing that were more mainstream. And it wasn't just about like restricting and being hungry. It was incorporating resistance training and eating to fuel and nourish your body, which felt so natural. And I was eating more food than ever before, and I was getting leaner. So it was kind of bizarre.
So walk us through that. You've now like you pretty much reiterated what worked for you, right? It's like you find something that works for you, and now you're going to help other patients do the same and kind of follow the same process that you did, right? So obviously, you've now got started. What did that look like in the beginning? Like, what did your practice look like in terms of the quantity of clients you had as you just got started? Just kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so it's different when it's something you apply for yourself versus when you're coaching and supporting clients and you're not just wanting to help, but you're creating a business model so that your time can work for itself, right? Because of course you want to help people, but if you're going to be investing your time, you need to have a monetary incentive for yourself to actually create a business. So I had to figure that out, pay structures. I had to figure out how to manage my time, how much I could focus on the marketing side to actually acquire customers, clients, and then also how to manage your clients once you get them. So for me, it was a lot of trial and error, but it was also getting started. I think getting started is the hardest part. But once you do, it's kind of like if there's a will, there's a way. All these cliches, they really come alive when you're putting yourself in that position.
For sure. And do you think like it's always been that way for you? Would you say you had to kind of adopt a mindset when you were getting started that like it's okay to not have everything figured out right now? It's okay to go through trial and tribulation to get the practice to where you want it to be. Like, is that a mindset you'd say that you had to adopt, or were you kind of like just like in the deep end and like just going through the mist of everything?
Yeah, I would say it's not only okay, it's necessary. If you already know everything, then you're already further ahead than you need to be. It's really about just it's not even about, feeling confident. I would say that comes later once you practice and you just have to basically if you want to be a practitioner and you want to be in this work, you just have to start doing it. I would say the mindset and the confidence that follows, that's a byproduct of your actions.
And Rachel, if you had to look back, like obviously you're a few years in now, like things are a lot smoother sailing than when you just got started. Were there any major mistakes that you'd kind of warn any practitioners to look out for based on your own experience?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of mistakes. I would say for one, what people show you might not always be what they're actually doing. So you don't want to compare too much, especially if you're comparing like your very first experience with their 5 year, 8 year down the road. So you want to be cognizant of that, not getting too caught up in those weeds. I would say too, it's totally okay to make mistakes as long as you continue, that's really important as well. And things always sort of unravel in a good way, meaning that if you listen to your clients or your social media conversations, that feedback is really important in terms of helping you figure out which direction you're going to go in.
Yeah. And Rachel, like you've obviously built authority in a space where most practitioners either ignore it or oversimplify. So what I want to do is I want to talk a bit about what other practitioners can actually take away from the way that you've approached metabolic nutrition. So I guess first things first, like what would you say made metabolism a smart niche to build the business around compared to just staying like broad and just kind of helping anyone and everyone?
Okay. Well, niching down can sort of sound intimidating because a lot of people focus on what they're cutting out. But what you don't realizing is you're speaking a lot louder to the people that are listening. So it's really important to niche down. At least it was for me. There are a few exceptions, but when you niche, you're actually heard a lot louder. So I'd rather have two people that are actually consuming and want to work with me than to be speaking to 100 people that kind of scroll past.
So would you say you're completely on the side of like optimizing to be the specialist as opposed to just being a generalist?
I would say I'm like a 90%. It depends what you're trying to do in your personality, but if you really want to speak loud, and I would say if you want to make a bigger impact faster, niching can really help with that.
And if a practitioner who is listening right now is like super general, as I said, they help anyone and everyone, what would you say is one major tip that or piece of advice that you'd give them to kind of identify a niche or kind of identify which specific area of the market that they have some sort of competitive advantage in? Like what's one piece of advice you'd give a practitioner who's kind of in the search of identifying their niche?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say, if you're already posting and you're using generalities, that's the first step. So that's fantastic if you're putting yourself out there. The second thing I would say is listen to the feedback of people that are viewing your content. Are they focused on metabolism? Are they focused on weight loss? Are they focused on skincare? What is it that they're interested in? And then slowly kind of try content in that direction. Try posting about metabolism. Try posting about, again, aesthetics, whatever it is, and see how that performs. Because that's another way when you take the feedback and you actually apply it, you'll see the results. That's the amazing thing about social media is there are actual metrics that you can use to help guide you.
On that note of social media, Rachel, how do you kind of decide what level of complexity to share publicly versus like what belongs in like paid programs and like private sessions?
That's a great question. How to discern. I guess I always like to show pieces like that speak to an audience. So I like to talk a lot about balanced meals where you're getting protein, carbs, and fats, and I like to share that. And then when it comes to how to put all those pieces together in a functional program, that's more when I onboard clients and give them more one-on-one or even group attention. But in terms of what you're going to post on social media, it can just sort of be there's no real there's no real I guess limitation to what you want to post. It's just in terms of how much time it's going to take up or putting things together more strategically. That's when you'd want to work with a client one on one.
And would you say that specializing specifically as a metabolic nutritionist has kind of just led you to endless benefits for your practice? One, because your messaging becomes super clear. It's like you speak into a specific segment of the market. But then two, because you're positioned as this expert and specialist, not only is it like more beneficial to the patient that's coming to you for help because this is what you do specifically, but over and above that, in terms of it being beneficial for yourself, Rachel, it's like you can literally charge more now because you are super specific and this is who you help. Like this is your avatar, you know? So would you say that having a very specific niche has allowed you to charge slightly higher prices? And when I say higher prices, I mean like charging based on transformation rather than transactional value.
Mhm. So when you have a niche, and I like the way you just said that, but when you have a niche, you're really charging for the value you provide, not necessarily how much time it takes you. So that's really important to consider. Figuring out, especially when people see you as an authority, you can absolutely charge more. So when you're hyper focused on one thing, it breeds confidence. People have confidence in you in that one topic, and they want to pay for that value as well as that support. So I would say that I have seen people be very successful with niching down, and it's because of that. You're instead of trying to be a person focused on so many things, you're dialed into one, and that alone breeds a lot of authority and confidence for people that are getting to know you or starting to become familiar.
And I have something quite interesting on that note. And it was a discussion that I actually had the other day, Rachel. And it was about becoming like super specific with the type of patient that you help. And essentially, this practitioner that I was speaking to, she had asked her mentor like, how can she position herself as an expert in her field? And her question was kind of like, should I become an expert and then position myself as that person? Or should I position myself as an expert, like from the get go, in order for people to think that I'm an expert, right? So I just want to get your feedback on that. Like, would you say that you need to position yourself as that person in order to be seen as one? Or do you think you should like try a slightly broader spectrum, see where your expertise lie, and then once you've gained results like that, then only kind of say, okay, like this is what I do, this is what I specialize in?
Well, perception is really powerful. So if you start off by positioning yourself as an expert in the field, that can take you off really far really quickly. However, I know I hate when there's like multiple answers to one question. However, for me, I actually started broader and I niched down. So I'm very passionate about metabolism, but just because something you're passionate about doesn't mean other people that's what they're looking for. And the people that when I was posting that I was speaking to quite well was metabolism and specifically gut health and how that overlaps. So that's sort of how I was able to niche down. So I did start general and I sort of went through that tunnel and figured out what to focus on. But if you do start off by putting yourself as an expert, I do think you can hit the ground running quite quickly too.
How would you say that focusing specifically on metabolism has impacted your ability to scale the practice, in this case, the business?
hmm Well, again, like people are they know if they're going to follow me, I'm going to be talking to them about how to leverage their their metabolic state, their system. So by doing that, there's no question of what is she focused on. So it's really easy to make people say, I'm interested or I'm not. Right? If you're doing generalities, it's harder for people to make up their mind. Do I care that much? I'm not sure. And then it creates sort of indecision. And then it doesn't help sort of exponentially grow as fast. Whereas when I was as I am positioned a lot more with metabolism, people are like, yes, I'm interested, or no.
And was this your thought process from the beginning? Because I think for some practitioners that are just getting started and just picking a niche, it's like, I think there's some sort of fear associated with being too specific. It's like if I go down this avenue, I'm only going to be able to help these people. And like, it's not truly the case. But did you ever have some sort of like fear or some sort of hesitance or resistance towards the idea of being super specific?
Of course. But the thing is, as you put yourself out there and you try different things, you see what works and also what works for you. And then when you start to see results, those kind of fears dissipate because you're transforming as your brand transforms, right? As a practitioner, you're growing the more things that you do and the more things that you try. And I know that's a really common fear with niching down, but again, you're speaking a lot louder to less people than a quieter voice to multiple people. So even if you use that as an analogy, if I'm having a one-on-one and the person is literally listening, taking in what I'm saying, that's a little more impactful than if I'm speaking to a group of people, but I'm whispering and there's a lot of noise in the background and people are looking at their phone or they're looking. That's the difference, I think, between niching down. It's that one-on-one conversation versus talking to a crowded room with a lot of noise in the background. Nobody's really caring about what you're saying, or they are, but not enough to make that extra effort or know what they're saying. So it's one of those things where try it. If you're nervous about it, try it. If you're going to get results, great. If you don't, then keep doing what you're doing.
For sure. I completely agree with you. I think when you I understand being a generalist when you're just getting started to kind of figure things out and kind of dip your toes into the water. But I feel like if you just remain that way, as you said, I feel like your message becomes diluted. Like it becomes less powerful because you're speaking to a wider level of audience, so you can't be so specific. But what I want to do, Rachel, is I just want to shift gears a little bit. I want to quickly break things up with a quick game. It's called This or That. It's super simple. I'll give you two options that every practitioner faces like at some point in their career. and you just pick which one you'd go with. Like no explanations, just true raw answer.
Okay.
All right. So first things first, generalist practice or niche specialty?
Niche.
Instagram content or email marketing?
Instagram.
High ticket one-to-one programs or scalable group offers?
Scalable group.
Organic growth or paid ads?
Organic.
Post in daily or post in only when it's polished?
A daily.
Speaking at live events or building authority online?
Oh, authority online.
Creating free resources or running webinars?
Free resources.
Cool. And then our second last one, building authority through research-backed content or storytelling?
Storytelling.
And then the final one, slow, steady growth or fast-paced experimentation?
Slow, steady.
There we go. Perfect. So, Rachel, obviously from the outside looking in, I'd imagine that your business runs as smoothly as your Instagram feed looks. So, I know with that being said that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, right? So, what I want to do is I just want to pull back the curtains a bit and go inside how you've actually built the practice around your metabolic specialty. So, once you actually decided to specialize in metabolism, how did you structure your services around it?
So again, I guess I want to paint a realistic picture because where I am now is not where I started. And it's a constant game of iteration after iteration. And every time you make a mistake or you do something well, that's feedback. So you want to take those feedbacks and apply them. So actually, at the very beginning, I was getting a lot of in-person referrals. So it was actually the conversations I'd have with people, or if I'd be at the gym, or my husband had some affiliations with some professional athletes, and we were working at their gyms and some nutrition. So as I was just showing up there and putting myself out there and telling people what I was doing, that's how they wanted to start to work with me. Now, when you first, it depends where you're at, but when I first got my first client, I was blown away. Oh my gosh, somebody's going to actually pay me to talk to them about nutrition. And it sort of changes. You grow as again your brand grows. So at first you're in total shock, and then it becomes more of a routine. So once I had somebody interested, then I created an onboarding process, and I did that with some consultation and watching what some people were doing, and again learning as I went and created a program through an app and then started to onboard clients and work with them one to one with weekly check ins.
What steps did you take to position yourself as a thought leader in your content and then also your marketing?
So, if you mean what steps, I guess the first thing is you have to want to do it and then start posting, and your content will evolve. If you look back, especially on my TikTok, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. But at the same time, it'll be very relatable because you can see I put myself out there before I had a clue what I was doing. But again, I was putting myself out there. I was listening to the feedback that I was receiving, and then I was adjusting my content based on the feedback.
Would you say at that time, like as you just started kind of analyzing the feedback and analyzing all the different metrics of kind of what worked and what didn't, would you say you were like fully confident in what you were doing, or was it kind of
No.
like I'm not confident yet, but like I'm kind of doing this to figure things out?
Yeah, you don't even have to finish that question. I'm interrupting you. No, the confidence grows as you grow. So even sometimes now I put myself out there in different ways. Like a lot of feedback that I've gotten is to talk more about myself and my personality and my sort of decision making. And I've really tried to focus on food and supplements and what people can do because I don't want to put myself out there in that way, just simply because I'm shy about it. But because I'm learning that feedback and I'm taking it seriously, I'm slowly trying to do that as simple as when I post a story on my Instagram, instead of just posting a picture of breakfast, I'm writing things that I like about breakfast or what happened during the day or, just trying to personalize. Again, for me, that's a baby step. But at least it's a step towards my goal, right? So the confidence grows as you do. And if you're not feeling confident, that doesn't mean you don't hold value in what you want to share or in your content. It just means it's a feeling that you have, and it's definitely worth testing and putting yourself out there despite the confidence.
So, Rachel, you've obviously quite clearly got quite a big audience across all different social media platforms, right? And I'm sure that, well, I know so because we aren't some crazy like celebrity or influencer or anything like that. So I'm sure there's a far deeper strategy behind the reason why you actually post in content. So can you kind of walk us through the system that you have in place in order to kind of attract new people to your offer, attract new people to who you are and what you do, and then kind of walk us through the process of how you take someone once they've kind of once you've kind of gained their attention through social media, and then to the final stage where they actually potentially book in with you or want further information. So, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so much to say about that, but I would start by saying that there's content that does really well in terms of reach and engagement. And then there's content that tends to convert. And that content can be, not always, but can be different. So when you're talking to clients versus people that are seeing your content as a little bit more entertainment or informative rather than actually wanting to hire you as support. So it's a little bit different. How do you figure out which one is which and which one to post? Um, Again, it's a lot of trial and error, but I'd say first you want to start by reaching people. So you want to post a variety of different types of posts, static, carousel, and then reels. So you actually want to use as many features as you can on Instagram because you have to look at Instagram as like a storefront. It wants you to use the whole storefront, not just one part of the store. So getting familiar with the app. The other thing I have to tell you with that though is I never was a social media person ever. Like I said, I was a store manager at a grocery store, and I was very old school in that way. So I understand if you're not familiar, if you're more of a practitioner and you focus a lot more on research and nutrition, just by being on the app and trying things, you will develop that skill set. So if that's overwhelming you, that's totally normal. And I would just focus on one thing a day, something new every day. So that's the first step is you want to start using a variety of different content. When you're talking about like symptoms or pain points, that's when you tend to get clients that are actually, sorry, that's when you try to actually get people that want to be your client. When you focus on certain recipes or overall generalities, or for me, when I focus on cravings or balanced dish, breakfast, that's more reach. So you're going to get a little bit more new people curious. But those are like warmer leads. And then to get to people that actually want to work with you, you want to speak a little bit more about the symptoms and that you do have a plan in place that can help them. Once you do that, another way to sort of know that you have more leads is through your stories. So your stories is a little bit more intimate. People actually know who you are when they're paying attention to your story. Your content is more, again, like your first meet and greet. Your story is more people actually coming to lunch at your house. They know you a little bit more. And then when you're having those kind of dialogues, you can get in DMs and then you can bring them over to email and nurture that way.
And on that note of the different types of content, obviously each type of content has a different goal or objective in mind. How do you go about picking, like, how do you think of what ideas to post? Do you, is it off the top of your head? Do you use ChatGPT? Like, what does your process look like when you kind of map out the ideas that you want to execute on in terms of the direction you want to head with your content?
It's a little bit of both. So I like to do a little bit of research in the field that we're in. So when I focus on metabolic nutrition, I do a little bit of research. So you just search it, hashtag metabolism, and then you look at the content and you say, what's something that I also align with and agree with, or how can I present this information in a impactful way? You also, in your day-to-day life, what works for you, or again, when I'm talking to clients, sometimes they'll tell me something that really stood out that, again, when you're in the field, it seems obvious to you, but it's not so obvious to your avatar client. So when you're having those dialogues and those conversations, you just kind of make note of, oh, that was interesting to somebody, and is it interesting with other people? And then you develop the content based on that.
Do you feel that to be successful on social media as a practitioner, you have to be able to put your face on?
I would say as a practitioner, probably it's a good idea. I will say I grew a lot of my authority by focusing really on the food and the tips. Then people started to get curious, who's the person behind these tips? Who's the person behind this food? To be really impactful, I think if you personalize it and you put yourself out there, it would do a lot better.
And Rachel, do you handle your own social media or do you outsource production, editing? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I do it myself. I did have somebody involved at one point, and it was really helpful. But I've sort of structured my business where I can focus on the marketing side. Plus, I really like the marketing side because I've met a lot of practitioners where they're fantastic at the one-to-one, but the marketing side is something that they're not as familiar or didn't expect to fall into or need that skill. And so personally, I think marketing is an incredible piece that whether we're in nutrition or, another business, it's really important to hone in on.
And how do you make that shift? Because obviously you've gone to school, you've learned, you've gained all the knowledge, you have all the wisdom, you've gained the education on how to actually be a clinician. But now
Yeah.
it's like you got to be a business owner. Like great, you know how to help these patients solve their problems, but it's like you need patients to help. So, like, what mindset shift did you kind of have to adopt in order to make that jump from clinician to clinician plus business owner?
Well, I can't. I'll just speak for myself. I don't know what would work for other people, but for me, when I was leaving like a very solid management position that I started as a cashier, worked my way into store management over a few years. I always saw myself staying there and getting into regional and working at this company. But when my husband mentioned to me, you could do this and planted that seed, I thought, okay, so when I quit my job, it was a really big deal. And so I was going to just do whatever it takes to make it happen. And so learning marketing was part of that whatever it takes strategy. And so I did. And I'm so grateful because again, you really get to see what you're made of. And that's how you build confidence is just taking risks and getting through them.
And for practitioners that are looking to make that jump, where like they are invested, they are keen to learn about the marketing side of things to ultimately enhance their practice, where would you say they should start? Like, is there a specific mentor that you learned from, or how do they familiarize themselves with this marketing, like this crazy thing that they've never ever heard of? Like where do they start?
Well, actually, that's a really good point. You can search like content creation and find somebody that resonates with you. Obviously, well, maybe not obvious, but check out what they're doing and how their content is performing and what their tips are and try them. And if you're noticing again, you're seeing results, then that might be a great person to stay in touch with. That was one thing that I did early on, especially on my TikTok. I was searching content creation tips or yeah, how to grow a following, and that information I started to apply and practice. But right off the bat, I would tell you that storytelling does really well when you share stories, especially in a carousel way. That's fantastic for growth. So it doesn't always have to be like educational, like this is what you do to support your metabolism. It can be simply like how I changed my life or how I helped improve my metabolism, and then kind of go into your story, because that's what really resonates with people is hearing your story and what you did.
Rachel, you've obviously touched on the two platforms that you've mentioned, Instagram and TikTok. Now, I guess my question around that would be like, if you're a practitioner, right, and let's say you've now identified your niche, you've specialized, like, how do you determine which platform to post on? Do you kind of just wing it and post on them all just in case? Or should you be like super intentional and specific with your platform choice?
Well, since you're asking me, I would say I would be really intentional about it. If you try to take on more than you can chew, again, it's sort of like generality versus niching. If you're trying to do everything, you might not do everything very well. If you're overwhelmed because you're a practitioner and you're just dipping your toe in the marketing pond, pick one platform. For me, I started with Instagram and then I jumped over to TikTok and I managed them both. But at first, Instagram was more than enough for me to take on. So I would, and there's no specific reason why I did that. I think it was just because the Fitfluencer that my husband introduced me to, her main following was on Instagram. So when he planted the seed that you could do this, it gave me an aspirational goal. And so I simply was replicating in my version of that. So that's why I chose Instagram. But if TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, whatever speaks more to you or you have more familiarity there, I would suggest using it. That then you can grow your confidence, then you can transition to whatever platform. Everybody will have an opinion about the platforms. And I would say just start by putting yourself out there, and then you can develop your own opinion and grow your own community and authority.
So we've obviously just touched on content and planning posts and so forth. So Rachel, my question to you is how do you kind of balance like the patient care side of things in your practice, but then still like allocate time to marketing and content and how do you find that balance between the two?
So they're two very different roles, and I think that's the first step you have to realize is I'm doing two jobs. So one is a marketing component job, so it's like I'm hired myself for marketing, and I've hired myself as a practitioner. So you have to look at it like that. Some people might not want to do the marketing side, so that's a great thing to offload and to hire somebody to do it for you so that you can be a practitioner 110%. I personally love doing the marketing side, so that's why I do it. And then I've set up things in my practitioner side. Sometimes I'll do group things, I'll do video calls and pre-recorded so that it doesn't take up so much time. And then that way I can focus on both. Also, I know we were doing the pick one or the other really quickly, and when we talked about high ticket or group calls, sometimes high ticket is a great option because if you have high ticket, then you have less clients, then you can focus on the marketing side as well. So it just depends on the model that you develop, and all of that happens by just starting. So if you're a practitioner that's interested, you just have to start posting. Your niche will develop, um, and then you'll figure out which kind of model you're going to build for your business.
So we've obviously discussed the acquisition side of things and what that process looks like. Another extremely important part in any business is once you've acquired these patients, once you've acquired these customers, how do you now retain them, right? So what are some processes or systems that you potentially have in place to ensure that your client retention rates are up to scratch and where they should be?
Yeah. So, very first thing with retention is obviously you want to give them a really high quality service. So, if they say they're allergic to eggs, you don't want to put eggs in their meal plan. If they say they've been struggling with eggs, so you really do want to start with just the basics, making sure that you're actually listening and paying attention and helping the client towards their goal. Sometimes too with clients, they're not always upfront about what their goal is. Like I get a lot of clients that will tell me like, I'm just tired, I'm not feeling motivated. And then when I talk to them, I say, if we follow this kind of protocol or this kind of program, you might lose weight as well. And then they're like, oh, that's amazing. So they don't always come up, upfront with what it is. So the very first thing I would say is just making sure that you're being a really solid practitioner because that's how you build also a referral base. That was something that really helped me at the beginning is my one-to-one clients were referring other clients. Then also with retention, giving freebies or sending books or handwritten cards or little things that you can do that go a long way so they don't just feel like they're buying your program, but it's more of a relationship and it's impacted you as well as them. So it's really about building that relationship. That helps with retention quite a bit as well.
What are your thoughts on AI, specifically in the nutrition world and the nutrition side of things?
I think AI is a really great tool for the nutrition world. I have so many different app companies reaching out and I've been playing with them. Like this most recent one is when you go out to a restaurant, you can take a picture of the menu and it'll tell you the nutrient and the caloric um, breakdown of the recipe of the menu. So I think it can be really helpful. I don't think we should be afraid of it. I think it's something that we should familiarize ourselves with. I think it can be a great tool, for negotiating via email if you're using ChatGPT. Um, yeah, I think I would say just play with it and see what you think because so far from my experience, there's been some things with inaccuracies, but the overall ideas and the goals are pretty interesting and can be really beneficial tools. So definitely I'm embracing it and really looking forward to seeing how that unfolds.
I think the secret to your growth ultimately comes down to consistency. Like strategy is one thing, implementation's another. But at the end of the day, like if you're just consistent, most people will see results, right? Like if you're just able to kind of um uphold pain for a sustained period of time, like on the other side of it is usually light, right? Like there's there's no dark without light. There's no light without dark, rather. So I guess my question here is like for practitioners that are wanting to grow their social media and they wanting to get more reach, what piece of advice would you give them if they've just been like posting but like not seeing results and it just feels like this boring, tedious role where it's like it they're just not enjoying it. Like what piece of advice would you give them to kind of shift things up?
So consistency is very important. However, if you're doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same results, then you're going to keep yourself in that position. You really want to make sure you're iterating. So post and then make something just the smallest thing, even a different font, a different cover photo, something different the next time. If you're feeling stagnant with growth, if you're posting something that's doing really well, then iterate that. So use that similar aesthetic or that similar uh, conversation, whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you're being consistent while also adjusting or amending your content so that you get exposure to that different result. That's probably what I would say. I've seen a lot of people where they'll post over and over and they'll have like 2,500 posts, but their account is really small. And sometimes I feel for them because I really admire their drive. Clearly, they're driven and they're capable and they're going at it all in. However, they're not really changing up their content, and that's why they're staying where they are. And so, to really make your content take off, you you need to try different things. So consistency is the very first thing, and then adjusting it to see what else you can do. And again, as simple as just changing the style, whether it's a static post, a carousel, a reel. These are things that you want to do. Down the road, you can use the multi-platform thing where sometimes people will come to me on Instagram because they found me through TikTok. So that's kind of cool too. But that's once you sort of master one thing, and then you can start to diversify a little bit more.
Would you say there are any habits or you have any like specific routine or some sort of consistency in your day-to-day life that kind of allows you, Rachel, to be as competitive as possible in terms of being the best version of yourself? Like I know for me, for example, I'm a strong believer of a strong body is a strong mind. Like
Mhm.
I've done this through trial and tribulation. Like I've had weeks where like you go to gym consistently, like you just feel good, your mind feels strong. And then like you obviously have times where like you start slacking and you miss a day and then 2 days and 3 days. And I feel like that lack of consistency is a direct correlation to the confidence that you could experience in real day life to in real day like in real day-to-day activities, right? So what habits do you kind of take on every day that allow you to be the best version of yourself?
So first and foremost, everybody's a little bit different, right? So you want to make sure that you customize what brings out the best of yourself to you. So, for example, for me, I notice that I'm a completely different person when I have a good night's sleep versus when I have a really interrupted or rough night's sleep. So for me, sleep is really a big part of the way my day is gonna unfold. Another thing for me is support. So, meaning the environment and the people that I'm around. So, when I was at, again, Whole Foods, the health food grocery store that I was managing, a lot of the people, even though we're at a health food store, they didn't practice any healthy habits. Actually, they're ordering pizza in the staff room, and well, nothing wrong with pizza, but every day, and not taking care of themselves and not sleeping, and they would sort of roll your eyes if you would go to the gym and stuff like that. And I understand that to an extent, but I knew that wasn't the lifestyle, or that didn't bring out the best version of myself. So I would listen to a lot of podcasts, either entrepreneurial ones or fitness people, just so that I would feel connected, even though I wasn't directly around people that followed what I aspired to be. So for me, it's really getting a really good night's sleep, and then making sure that I put myself in an inspiring environment, or that I introduce material into my life that helps me get there. Again, for me, it's really big on listening to different people's stories, how they grew their businesses and their brands, and that really helps me feel motivated and excited to put that effort into my brand.
I want to ask you one last question on social media that, or one last question on social media specifically that has kind of come to mind, and it's a tactic or piece of strategy that I've seen some very influential and famous people use. So my question to you, Rachel, is what are your thoughts on using controversy to gain engagement and views and just broaden your reach?
Well, I would say that whether I have an opinion about it or not, it works. So if you're going to be very controversial or polarizing, it works. So that's one thing to say. Then you can add your own opinion and your ethics, I guess, around that. So I don't do too much controversy because it's not really my personality or my style. Um, so I stay focused on what I feel does well and aligns with me. However, it has been an explosive way for a lot of people when they say very provoking statements. It definitely gets attention.
Would you say all attention's good?
Personally, no. I don't, I guess I have a certain set of ethics that I hold myself to, and I want to grow and make the biggest difference that I can in a positive way, which again, a lot of the things that do well are negative, titles and stuff like that. It's just that, people are allowed to do whatever they want to do. I personally like to stay within the ethics that make me feel good. And when I was at this grocery store, the whole staff that I was managing, it's about 200 people. And that's pretty impressive. Like it's a good chunk of people, not all at once in the store, but just all onboarded onto the team. In social media numbers, 200 is very actually considered relatively small. So one of the reasons I wanted to leave from there and transition into social media is because I wanted to make a really positive impact on as many people as I could. And I thought if I can transition in that way, then I could probably have a greater reach. So that was something that really meant something to me. However, I wanted to make sure that I was trying to breed as much positivity and goodness as I could. So those are sort of my ethics and standards. But people can do what it is they want to do, and I'll make sure to engage with the content that I believe in.
So, Rachel, I think one thing that's inevitable in any business is that there's going to be ups and downs, right? There's going to be times where things are great, but then there's also going to be times where you feel like your back's against the wall. So, how do you stay grounded and confident when business challenges inevitably show up?
Yeah, so again, when I was in a corporate position, there was one point where we just received an email and there were 15 people eliminated from the team. So there's this illusion that there's so much stability in these corporate positions. And from my experience, I've never seen change happen more quick than in corporate elimination restructuring. So that sort of stuck with me. So when I branched off to do my own thing, I actually felt a little bit more security because the results were contingent on my effort and my capabilities and my willingness to try. So I felt like that was a little bit more of a preferable investment than say being, at somebody else's, just flip of a coin, we're going to eliminate these positions all of a sudden for XYZ, whatever reasoning that they needed. So that gives me a lot of drive, I guess, to invest in my business. Another great example is when I left a corporate position and I started doing this. Although on social media you can grow a following, it really is a lot of independent work. You're creating content on your own. You're behind an email. You're doing a lot of independent work. So I wasn't used to that. I was used to being in more team oriented situations where we're all applying feedback and having discussion. So there was a little bit of a growing curve. But again, I started to network with other creators. At the time, I had like 500 followers, and I started reaching out to other content creators with 500 followers and just started chatting with them and other practitioners and started to grow networks like that so that I could kind of scratch that itch of that interaction and that motivation that I was getting from talking to people. And so you're going to come across all kinds of things, but if it's something that you really feel passionate about, you're going to prevail. And yeah, I love people that put themselves out there, and I have such a respect for anybody that just gets started and gets going because you never know what's gonna come. Again, as cliche as it is, that's really how a lot of the best business people start.
Rachel, I'd love for you to share what your work looks like today and the different ways that you're actually supporting people right now. So, what are the main offers that you currently run?
Yeah, so I do a lot of one-to-one coaching. So anybody that's trying to lose weight or try to get more energy, that kind of thing, I do one-to-one coaching. So you can easily just send me a DM on Instagram, or my email is in my bio as well, info@rachellaurice.com. So you're more than welcome to reach out. I also want to say, considering this podcast and the network that you've got going on, Gilad, I'm more than happy if you're a new practitioner and you just want to chat a little bit more about what you can do and any kind of specifics that maybe are prompted from this. So yeah, that's one of the things that I'm happy to do as well.
What type of avatar, or in this case, client, do you find that your coaching is designed for? Like, who gets the most benefit from what you're offering?
So for me, it's a lot of busy people that are trying to lose weight. So a lot of people that I work with are actually trying to lose that like last 15 pounds that really stays snug to them. So that's the kind of client. It can be any gender I've worked with, and just anybody that's busy that wants some key tactics.
And then, Rachel, one more time, where can people learn more about what you have to offer and just connect with you directly?
Yeah, so on TikTok and Instagram, I'm at Rachel Laurice. So at Rachel Laurice, and Laurice is my middle name after my late grandmother, who was so cool.
Perfect. Well, Rachel, before we wrap up, I've got one last super quick game for you called
Uh-oh.
Complete the Sentence, right? I'll start the
Okay.
sentence and you finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. Does that sound good?
We'll see. We'll see how it sounds.
All right. The best piece of advice I ever received was
Getting started.
one thing I wish I knew earlier in my career is
Don't take yourself too seriously. Just try.
the part of my work that lights me up the most is,
Interacting with people,
and success to me means.
doing what you want and continuing no matter what comes at you.
There we go. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on Practify Podcast. For practitioners listening, I think that your story is such a powerful reminder of what happens when you actually commit to a clear direction, build authority around it, and obviously back that with both content and confidence. So you've shown that choosing a specialty isn't necessarily about limiting yourself. It's more about creating clarity in your business and actual trust with your clients. So, Rachel, it's been incredible having you on, and I know our listeners are walking away with practical lessons that they can apply in their own practice. So, Rachel, once again, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Gilad.